Listen to the Vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. And very happy to welcome back Mr. Alan Lazaros here. And he is a business coach. And we're going to catch up with him and just have a great conversation. So, Alan, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Kyle, first and foremost, thank you for having me. I told you in the pre-recording, I said I don't take it lightly to be able to speak into the lives of others. 9 years ago, I started listening to podcasts, and they definitely changed my life, got me thinking about things I had never thought before. And if we can get you thinking about something you've never thought before, I think that's a huge W. It's a huge win. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
My
As
pleasure.
for the message, it's also the messenger. And so to provide some context, I'm going to try to give the short version because it sounds like we've got about 30 minutes here, and I'm trying to condense 35 years into 3 minutes. It's not an easy task. And so yeah, I'll give you kind of the Cliff Note version, but I often joke. I say if you're on camera, I look very young, so I often joke and say I'm hoping to hit puberty at 36. I'm 35 years old, so I'm trying to condense 35 years into 3 minutes. So let's do this. So the first thing that I think I want everyone to understand is I didn't understand any of this at the time. It's only in hindsight that I've started to really do some therapy work and understand. In my 30s, I really feel like I started to get it. Even though in my 20s, I didn't understand what was going on in my childhood, I certainly didn't. So it might sound like I get it all, but it's only in hindsight. So when I was 2 years old, my father passed away in a car accident when he was 28. And he was from a big Irish Catholic family. My mom and papa, my grandma and grandpa, his parents, had 6 children. Jim, Joe, John, Jane, Joan, Jeanette. So Jim, Joe, John, Jane, Joan, Jeanette. And John was my dad. And John passed away when he was 28. I was 2. My older sister was 6. My mom was 31. So born into adversity for sure. And that definitely affected my mom and sister a lot, particularly more than me. Understandable. Then I had a stepfather from age 3 to 14. My mom and my stepdad got together, and his name was Steve Lazaros, and my real last name is actually McCorkle. My birth father's last name is McCorkle, Irish Catholic family. And so I'm the only non-Greek Lazarus. So whenever people are Greek, they are Lazarus. They always do that, because I'm blonde hair, blue-eyed, not Greek, not a hair on me, So anyways, so from 3 to 14, I often refer to that part of my life as boats and BS. My stepfather, motorcycles, snowmobiles. My mom drove a BMW. This was like mid to late 90s, early 2000s, particularly in the 90s. Everyone was doing well, particularly in the US, but globally, the 90s .com bubble. I mean, everyone just had money. It was just a wild time. And again, as a kid, I didn't know that, but we were upper middle class, but my mom and stepdad did not get along, and that's putting it very politely. And so my stepfather leaves at 14, takes 90% of the income with him. And I go from Xbox, Dreamcast, early Christmas presents, ski trips. We had a yacht, to now I get free lunch at school because our income is so low. And I went from, I can't wait to go to my dream college, WPI, Worcester Polytechnic Institute. It's kind of like a mini MIT, to be a computer engineer. And it's $50,000 a year. And so I went from, I hope I get in, to even if I do get in, how am I going to go? I can't afford $50,000 a year. And that's back then. So it's a lot. So essentially what I now understand is when we were the Lazaroses, I tried to give you the short version, but when we were the Lazaroses, we were kind of unconsciously not associating with the McCorkles. And I took my stepdad's last name when I was 7. Around 7. I don't know if it was exactly 7, but my mom told my sister and I, we can take his last name if we want to, and we did. And we were trying to be the Lazaroses, so we kind of didn't talk to the McCorkles. Then when my stepdad left at 14, he got the yacht and the apartment building. We got the house and the dog. He not only took 90% of the income with him, but he also took his entire extended family with him. So my Grandma Joan, Grandpa George, uncle, all my uncles and aunts and all that stuff. I haven't seen a single one of them since. Not one of them, right? Which again, at the time, I didn't know any different. I didn't get it. I did talk to my stepdad on Facebook Messenger a little bit, but I've never seen him since. And I've never seen any of his extended family. At that same time, I didn't realize this. 14 was the hardest year of my life, hands down. But I didn't know at the time because I was just trying to go through it. My sister moves out, understandable, at that same time with her older boyfriend. My mom gets in a fight with her sister, my Aunt Sandy. And we get ostracized from my mom's side of the family too. At that same time. Like this is all within a year and a half, maybe even shorter than that, to be honest. I'm not sure. I think it was all around the same time because my mom and my aunt got in a fight about my stepdad and what we were doing with seeing him as kids and all that. And so essentially I lost 3 families by the time I'm 14 years old, which I did not realize until I was in my 30s and I started doing a lot of therapy. I often joke, I say, guys can't even ask for directions, never mind get a therapist, right? But it's been the most empowering thing ever. And so anyways, so now I get it. And I just did the only thing I knew how to do, which there's 4 trauma responses. Now I've studied this. At the time, I didn't know what the hell any of this meant. But fight, flight, freeze, those are the 3 people know. And then there's fawn. Fawn was my big one, but there's the fight one. You can either fight others, tear them down, or you can fight to be better. My trauma response was fawn around my mom, stepdad, that kind of stuff. But in my own real life, it was fight to work harder, aim higher, get smarter. That was like my trauma response. That's the only thing I could ever do about pain. Work harder, get smarter, aim higher. And I didn't realize this. This was all unconscious back then. And so I got straight A's through all of high school. I graduated 8th in my class. I got 189 in honors English. I never took honors after that again, but luckily it was weighted because I got what's called the President's Award. And so I have a award behind me signed by George W. Bush that essentially states you got straight A's for every report card, all 4 report cards every year, all 4 years. So 16 report cards straight A's, except for that 189 in honors English, but it was weighted because it was an honors class. And so I got a 95 or above GPA for all of high school, which is, it's actually signed by George W. Bush too. That's how few people get these.
Oh, wow.
And so I got a bunch of scholarships in financial aid. I was the obnoxious kid at the award ceremony that just might as well not sit back down. And particularly math and science was always my favorite. And then I went to WPI, got into my dream college. And again, aim higher, work harder, get smarter. And I went to computer engineering, which was brutal. And I found the smartest kids I could because I went from the smart kid to like everyone's a genius. So, how am I going to do this? And it's academic based scholarships. So if I lose my scholarships, I'm screwed. Whereas some of these other kids are just rich and they're fine. And their parents are paying for college and all that kind of stuff. My mom helped me a bit, but at the end of the day, it was sink or swim. And luckily I swam. Fast forward, I go into corporate. I get my master's in business from the same school, go from computer engineering to MBA. And then I go out into corporate and I just crushed it. It was awesome. And again, I now realize too, computer engineering today, you're just sought after. Everyone needs more computer engineers. So in some ways that was lucky, but in other ways it was one of the hardest degrees in the entire world to get, and from a very famous technical college. So anyways, I went from 65 to 85, 85 to 105, 105 to 125, 125 to almost 200 grand, 180 grand a year. And I'm in my early 20s. I've got no family. I've got, a girlfriend. I bought a car for 5 grand. I have 84 grand worth of college debt I paid off in a single year. Wow. I have 150 grand in an investment account at Vanguard. I bought a bunch of tech companies because I knew they would win, right? But again, apparently that's not normal. I just know they'll win because I know the economy. And so I was just off to the races, and I was deeply unfulfilled, but I was super successful. And I think what happens in life is we run whatever caused us a lot of pain. Being broke definitely caused me a lot of pain because I was a broke college student. When my stepdad left, we were broke. I just ran in the other direction. Money will solve my problems. And it did, a lot of them, but it didn't fulfill me at all. Then I get in my own car accident. So I'm 26, a top 1% global earner, computer engineer with a master's in business working for a company called Cognex. And at this point I'd worked for probably half dozen or more tech companies. And I'm professionally developed, but I'm not personally developed. I didn't realize that at the time. So I'm up in New Hampshire with my little cousin. We were playing Call of Duty. We weren't partying or anything. Going to TGI Fridays, and it was the bad winter in 2015 where the snowbanks were covering the signs. I was supposed to yield and I didn't. I end up on the wrong side of the road, and I look up from the GPS and I saw what I thought was a Mack truck in front of me, and it was the biggest, brightest lights I'd ever seen 10 feet in front of me. I mean, I thought for sure, computer engineering brain, it was like dead, no question. This is the end. Fortunately, it was a lift-kitted pickup truck. It was not a Mack truck, because if it was a Mack truck, I wouldn't be here. And thank you, Volkswagen. I drove a Volkswagen Passat 2004, and I bought this car $5,000 cash because I just wanted to invest all my money and pay off all my school debt in a single year. That was my goal. And this car saved my life. Thank you, Volkswagen, because I used to call this car the tank. It was a German engineered steel trap of a car. They don't make them like that anymore. Some do. We have a Tesla now that's really heavy. But this car was just a tank, and it totally saved my life. Both airbags deployed, and my cousin and I were physically okay. He hurt his knee on the airbag. I hurt my face on the airbag. But mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, my dad died in a car crash when he was 28 years old. I'm 26, and I've seen pictures of his car. Mine didn't look very different. And I'm sitting there going, whoa, this is the second chance my dad never got. And so now, and this is when I went all in on self-improvement, personal development, personal growth. And this is when I flipped the script, and instead of being successful and achievement-oriented from the outside in, I started working on the inside out. I had my existential quarter life crisis, is what I call it, at 26. I'm grateful for it now. But the best way I can describe it is before 26, I was professionally developed, resume, cover letter, LinkedIn, degrees, masters, all that, but I wasn't personally developed. I was externally driven and improvement oriented, but I wasn't self-improvement oriented. And so after that, I went all the way past broke, actually. I liquidated all my assets. I started my own company. I went into debt, but I was super fulfilled. And so now I joke and I say, I've been successful and unfulfilled, and that sucks. But I've also been fulfilled and unsuccessful, and it turns out that sucks almost as much. And now I'm very grateful. This is 9 years later, almost 10. And now I'm very successful and fulfilled. And I want my life to be an amplified version of what it already is. And now I'm a business coach, and we have a 21-person team, and we have a podcast that's heard in 170 countries now. We have 1,700 episodes. And I now, for a living, get to help people become more successful and more fulfilled. And that's really what I always needed. So it's really cool. And it was a hell of a journey.
At any point, did you feel sorry for yourself?
Definitely. There were many times where I would be alone. And I think now in hindsight, now I've coached so many people. So one of the cool parts about coaching is you have such a big statistical sample set now. So back in the day, all these problems that you think are you problems are actually just human problems. But we all have the same challenges as a human species, a human condition, but they're all different because we're all different. But there's certain principles that are unique to all of us. So to answer your question, I'm coming up on I have this thing called a 10,000 hour tracker of podcasting, speaking, coaching, and training. And coaching is my main thing. And so these are people from all over the world. I mean, not every country, but most countries. And now I've gone deep with so many people and pulled back the curtain that I realize certain things about me now that are just so different than normal. And so if you're wrong about one thing, you're wrong about everything. And I've been wrong about everything because I was wrong about myself. Like this whole self-belief thing and having that kind of trauma and then working harder, getting straight A's, like that's not normal. And I didn't know any different back then though. I honestly thought that was totally normal. So now I'm realizing as I get older, whoa, this is totally not normal. And the other piece of that, losing 3 families by the time you're 14 is also not normal. And so to answer your question, that I struggle with self-doubt and not just self-doubt, but feeling sorry for myself, the whole victim thing, I didn't do a lot of that. For some reason, I just have this inherent, whether it's a knowing, this is the way I would describe it. I think some people out there think life is supposed to be great. And so every time it's not, they think something's wrong. I'm the opposite. I think life is supposed to suck. And so anytime it doesn't suck, I think it's just gravy. It's like awesome. And so, and again, if you grew up in abundance and didn't have a lot of adversity, you probably have a skewed view of reality. And I probably have a skew in the other direction, to be honest. I mean, any day above ground for me is just like, hell yeah. Because when you grow up with that much, and there's a lot of stuff I didn't talk about that I honestly can't even talk about on a public medium because I don't want to incriminate anyone. But like my childhood was, there was some bright spots, and I need to say that because that's fair. But there's something called an ACE score, which is adverse childhood experiences, and they've done studies where the higher your ACE score, the more likely you lead to early mortality. And I was headed that way for sure. The car accident turned that around for me, fortunately. But I mean, my ACE score is ridiculous. It's statistically off the chart, which so somehow, some way, and I've been contemplating this my entire adult life. How did I do that? It's self-belief. If you don't have high self-belief, you're not gonna react resiliently and because aim higher, work harder, get smarter requires self-belief. And so I used to be too scared to be honest about this. I don't struggle with self-doubt a lot. And I think everyone knows that intuitively if you hear the way I talk. Everyone thinks I'm fairly arrogant, when in reality, you might just be really not confident. I'm very confident. I have a big, beautiful brain, and I'm able to reverse engineer finish lines. And for the most part, I feel very capable. I don't feel necessarily like I get along with people easy. I don't feel easily likable. So that's a whole nother conversation. But at the end of the day, I didn't fall for the victim thing. And if I did, it was for very short bouts of time. And I just got angry, and I just used that anger toward achievement. And I think my dreams and my goals in many ways saved my life because I climbed out of all the darkness eventually. And the key word there is eventually, because it really was quite alarmingly bad on the climb.
Especially with social media. It's like people are trying to out victim each other. And it's over some silly things too. I think if these people had gone through half of the stuff that I've heard people tell me on my show, or even some of the things I went through as a child, I don't think they could make it. This victim mentality needs to stop.
Well, you know what's interesting is this adversity is your advantage thing. It's a double-edged sword, because truth be told, I used to think everyone was lazy and unintelligent, when in reality, I'm just really hardworking and really intelligent. I didn't know that. And even saying that used to be scary for me. I'm just less of a coward now. But I've always been really good at stuff, and I've always been really smart. So I wonder what it would be like going through all that adversity without self-belief, without a big brain, without living in a free country, without the financial aid and scholarships that I got. So I try to have empathy for people who feel stuck. But truth be told, there's this other side of the coin that no one talks about, where it's like, listen, suck it up, Buttercup. Let's rock and roll. Like, what are we doing here? I'm sorry, but let's be honest. If you're complaining about something like someone got your coffee wrong, like, you need perspective desperately.
Right.
And life is supposed to suck. But despite that, you can make a meaningful life out of that, versus this everything's supposed to go my way thing. Like, whatever that is, just, it's not useful. It's not true. It's inaccurate. And the truth is that life used to be way harder for humanity than it is now. I mean, anyone who's older, my youngest is 18, my oldest is 63 on my roster for my business coaching. I'm telling you, the 60-year-olds, they got perspective that you don't. Like, their childhoods were so much worse than you can imagine. And the younger generations, they just have lost a lot of that grit. But they're also much more emotionally intelligent, and there's two sides to the coin. And so I get it, but at the end of the day, you're responsible for your own life.
That's right.
Life is not going to hand you any silver anything. And even if it does, you're going to end up complacent and lazy, which is eventually going to catch up to you.
Well, it's my generation's fault and the generation before. We wanted things to be better for our kids, And so we didn't want them to have to go through things that we went through, and we babied them too much. And now it's just gotten way out of hand.
It really has. Can I share something real quick that
Sure.
I don't want to say I never get to talk about, but this is a really powerful conversation that I think needs to be had. I had a 72-year-old mentor. He's now 77, 75. I was in my late 20s, and I'll never forget this. Certain people really do change your life, and his name's Dr. Robert Scott, and the world 5 times. He's written 23 books. He's a very wise individual. And again, no one's perfect, so I don't even like to attach my name to anybody, to be honest. But at the end of the day, I used to get dinner with him every Friday night for like probably a half a year. And we would talk. He was my mentor. And we would go to this Chinese buffet and just talk about life, and he'd help guide me. He's kind of like a wise older mentor. But I was looking for male role models because I didn't have one and all that. And then honestly, in many ways, I think I've surpassed him in my growth. And that was also a hard transition too. Sometimes the apprentice eventually comes the master. But he says to me, and I'll never forget it. He said, "Alan, they don't make them like you anymore." He's like, "Dude, back in my day, there were a lot of people who had goals like you. There were a lot of people who had standards and who worked hard and who it meant something. Excellence meant something." And I often get asked, Kyle, people will come up to me, "Are you in the military?" They'll always say that because I'm a clean cut guy. I have good posture. I try really hard to be a good person. And I feel like I have very high standards for myself. I don't try to project my standards onto other people, although sometimes in my coaching I do, because it's like, that's what you're hiring me for. But at the end of the day, I don't want to be this, whatever happened to this whole not caring is cool. Like, I don't know if it was rap or what, but this whole like, I don't care attitude, that is just so silly and unintelligent in my honest opinion. I've never been like that. For me, you need to care, and you need to care deeply about your own life, and you have to take responsibility for how you treat people. And I went through that phase too of ego, and I did drugs, and I was a badass. And it's just the dumbest thing ever. Honestly, it's just ridiculous. And luckily I woke up from that nightmare, but a lot of people are still there and they think it's cool. And unfortunately it works in the short term. In the short term, not caring is easier than failing. Not caring is easier than trying and looking embarrassed when you don't succeed. And so I agree with you. I think we overcorrected. I think your generation, the whole everyone gets a trophy thing and all that stuff. I think that we need to get back to center, and hopefully we are.
There was a moment in my life where my brother had passed away, and I went into a kind of feel sorry for myself phase, Anyhow, I got real heavy in the drinking and the drugs, and I was screwing up at work. And I had a boss that took me to the side, and he didn't hold back. I mean, he laid everything on the line. He didn't sugarcoat anything. And to most people, you would take, "Oh, this guy's so abrasive. What a jerk." But you know what? I appreciated him more than any other boss I think I ever had, because he didn't sugarcoat it, set me straight. And that was, I think, the beginning of my path of getting my life back together again. Instead of, "Oh, it's okay, honey." No, life is just not okay. It's never going to be okay. There's going to be adversity out there. You have to, that old saying, make lemonade out of lemons. You really have to do that with life.
The straight shooters, it takes tremendous courage.
Mm-hmm.
And the other piece of that too is what's the line between toxic masculinity and what's the difference between constructive feedback and then just destructive? Because if you're berating someone and putting them down, and like fat shaming, for example, that's not constructive. But you can't just you can't just let it all go. So it's such a weird duality. Duality is this idea that you can hold two seemingly opposing ideas in your consciousness simultaneously. And I'll give you an example. I know intellectually that I'm a productive human being who is contributing a lot, but I don't feel that way on a day-to-day basis. I feel lazy. And that's the irony. I'm not lazy and I know it, but like I don't hit the pillow at night going, oh, I was so productive today. Like if anything, I want to put more on the court. And then you've got these other people who think they're so hardworking, and it's so funny. It's like, listen, the fact that you think you're hardworking is probably proof that you're not. The most hardworking people I've ever met don't think they're hardworking. That's the paradox,
Mm-hmm.
right?
That's
They just
true.
get up and do it. It's automatic. It's in their nature. And so at the end of the day, we all have to hold this center point of two paradoxes, which is how do you hold a high standard for yourself and then in lead by example in that, but and be direct with people like your boss was, but also not be destructive and bully people. And that's that. I think there's an energy to it. I think bullying is tearing someone down. I think leadership is sometimes having to tear someone's ego down to help them grow. And that
Exactly.
is the hardest thing in the entire world because I have a 21 person team and I have just been taking L's for years on trying to figure out how to lead people effectively without hurting people's feelings. It's very hard. As a matter of fact, I don't even know if you can lead without hurting feelings. I think you have to,
Sometimes you're going to.
yeah. And you have to be vulnerable and honest about that of listen, this might hurt your feelings, but I need to speak my truth. And then I want you to also speak yours. And then let's figure out how to move forward. But that's the hardest thing is I can give myself feedback all day. I can say, Alan, you're lazy. Alan, you're not doing it. Alan, you need drinking too much and too often. Alan, you need to quit. Alan, that's no problem. It's telling other people that are on my team, like, listen, you can make excuses for the rest of our life, but if you want to be on this team, you have to up the ante here. You have to level up. This is next level university. This isn't mediocre university. And so that's the duality that you have to hold. And here's the truth. I can't say any of that unless I'm leading by example. And that's the thing. I'm not going to tell you to do something I'm not doing ever. I mean, that's the thing. If I'm drinking on the weekends and I'm lazy and I'm putting off my work and I'm procrastinating and I'm not proactive and I'm missing meetings and I'm late. I was late 3 minutes to your meeting today. I'm sorry. I'm not going to teach you how to be on time when I can't be on time. And I'm not going to tell you to be in the gym when I'm not in the gym, metaphorically. And that's been something I've had to learn more than anything is just leading by example. And I'm assuming that boss that you respect, he walked the talk, I'm assuming.
Oh, definitely. And that led to me actually becoming a supervisor one day. And you're talking about trying to tell somebody something without hurting their feelings. Try telling someone that they're they have a bad body odor, and the people that are working around them, it's making them sick.
My goodness. That was the feedback that you got?
I had to tell someone that. I had to pull them in and had to tell them, I'm sorry, man. You stink. I
Yeah.
forgot how I worded it, and I tried to be as tactful as I could and try to be understanding, but I also had to say, hey, man, this is actually a health issue.
When you were a supervisor, how many people were you in responsible for?
I want to say it was about 30 people, 35,
Yeah.
somewhere around there.
Until you've been leading, I mean, it's the hardest thing in the world, in my opinion. I also think it's the most meaningful. I think those two go hand in hand, right? It's a meaningful time of your life, but talk about just the challenges.
Well, give everyone your website.
So the website is nextleveluniverse.com. Although right now, for whatever reason, the website's down. I'm working with my IT team actually to work on that, but it'll be up probably by the time this airs. Nextleveluniverse.com, spelled just like it sounds. The podcast is Next Level University. Level up your life, love, health, and wealth. Self-improvement in your pocket every day from anywhere on the planet, completely free. 1% improvement per day. We do an episode every day. And at the end of the day, if you want to be more fulfilled and more successful in that order, Next Level University is something for you. So check it out. We've got a book club. We've got monthly meetups. We're doing one tonight. They're free. We've got a journal. We've got our own journal called the Dreamliner. What else? We've got an app, habit tracking app. We've got a podcast production team. We've got a social media agency. We've got business coaching for me. Kevin coaches podcasters. So Next Level Universe is all things next level. And the idea is, how do we lift up other people to help them create a bigger, better, brighter future? And in the 21st century, I think that's really the difference. Is a lot of people don't realize how much everything's changed in such a short amount of time. I mean, even COVID, everyone virtual, even us virtual right now. It was a different world back in the day, before internet and before all that. So if you want to win in the 21st century, NLU is a place that can help you. I believe in equal opportunity because I was given the opportunity to go to school, and I had two advantages in life. And honestly, I realized that I think it might have only been two, which is just weird to say. Number one, I had a really big brain, very grateful, very powerful mind. And number two, I was born in a country that invests in great minds, and I got financial aid and scholarships, and I wouldn't have been able to be where I am today if it wasn't for that. And so I earned it, but I also know that there's places in the world that don't have that. So I try really hard to have Next Level University be an opportunity for anyone who's willing to put in the work. We have the resources for you.
Alan, thank you again, man, for coming back on the show. And you're always welcome back.
Kyle, thank you for having me. I've always enjoyed our conversations. Say things that matter to people who care. That's exactly what you're doing, and I respect and admire that a lot. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. And I also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, I hope you'll come back. Please hit that subscribe button. From our regulars, you guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. Until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless, saying peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts. And on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network